Okay, lesson 35. We continue with the philosophy of the Kleshas. According to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, chapter 2. And today we started Sutra 13. As long as the root is there, it must ripen and result in lives of different class, length, and experiences. We touched upon this last week already when we discussed the issue of karma, because of course this is an extension of that. And it's a little bit the same story. I keep repeating myself. I often get ahead of myself also, but when you hear a story 2 or 3 times, it sticks better. That's not necessarily a bad thing. First of all, we're all from the same source. We're all from the same energy. And because of ego, and because of our limitation, of course, to see, we compare ourselves all the time with other people. And we label people according to good and bad. What we don't realize when we do that is that sooner or later we'll have to go through the same. We will have to experience the same kinds of challenges, obstacles, misery, sadness, pain. But also, we will experience good developments, health and wealth and prosperity. According to this philosophy, according to Eastern philosophy, we start from zero and we walk a long road. According to Buddhist philosophy, we have to live 1 million lives, reincarnations, to burn all that karma. So from total ignorance at the beginning, slowly working ourselves towards liberation. And because we are ignorant and stubborn and stupid, it takes 1 million lives. So yoga says, keep your eyes open, pay attention, and you may not have to suffer so many lives. In fact, you can make a huge jump in this life if you just start paying attention. Now you see in the first paragraph that explains this sutra about opposites. If you are a man that is very attracted to women in this life, you will or may become a woman in the next life. If you're very poor in this life, you very likely, because of that karma that you carry with you, will become rich in the next life. Now, interesting anecdote or interesting example of this is that most billionaires that we know these days who grab their chance because of technological developments all started poor. They all started poor. None of them is from a rich family that allowed them to go to Oxford or Harvard and they became a wizard in computer technology. They all, you know the anecdotes of Bill Gates or the guy from Apple who started in the shed in the garden shed or the car garage, the car shed of their parents, just started fooling around with technology and developed a passion because of that. Another interesting statistic is that NFL, the American Football League, these days the top sports people become filthy rich. Hundreds of millions of dollars they earn. In Europe also with the football leagues, the top league, in America with the NFL. So research has been done. If you Google it, you can find it. In the past, I did post it on the Yoga Teachers in Training support group. Research has been done that found that more than 75% of those top NFL players, they go bankrupt within a short time after retirement. That's shocking or hard to believe, but research has shown that that is the reality. Another reality is that people who inherit wealth very often within 1 or 2 generations lose that wealth. There are some families, established families around the world, that have taken very detailed precaution to guard their wealth, but most don't. And you might see the same pattern with the offspring of the Gates family and what's the Apple guy's name?
Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Steve Jobs' family. That further down the road, they gradually just waste their wealth, their capital. Because money, business, sounds very attractive, but it's very complicated and very difficult. There's a huge psychology behind it, because everybody wants to be rich, and yet there's not many people who actually achieve that. And those who do, people who win the lottery, the jackpot. There are so many stories of people who have won the jackpot, ended up in a world full of misery, lost it all, and then with a big sigh of relief say, I'm so happy that it's over. I'm so happy that it's gone. Because money business does very strange things with people. Unless you're ready to deal with that. And being ready is a matter of karma. So we all have to live through poverty. We all will live through wealth. It's all part of the cycle, the process that we are in to grow, to develop, to evolve. You see halfway in bold characters, what can you do about this? It's a story that comes back again and again. Pay attention. What is happening causing your disturbance? What is happening causing your conflicts? What is happening causing your misery? And in case of talking about wealth, what is it that is causing me to lose it? To not be able to hold on to it? And your most important tool is Sutra 11. Meditation is the answer. Why? Meditation is not a luxury like many people think for New Age groups or hippies or what have you. Meditation is of incredible practical value because it is the state of contemplation that allows you to connect the dots, that allows you to see the picture in which you see not only the misery, which is usually what people are limited to. People are limited to just seeing their pain, their suffering, their misery, without being able to go beyond it. As a meditator, a contemplator, you will start to see the network. You will start to see the cause and effect at play. And with that, you learn more and more about yourself. Your strong points and your weak points. And that is the tool that will shorten that 1 million lives that we are doomed to live through, if only we just start paying attention, keeping our eyes open. Also, I mentioned Asamprashnata Samadhi, which I mentioned last week also, because that is the technique in which you disidentify. One of the big causes of our misery, of our suffering, is that we see through ego. We see ourselves and the world around us through ego. And that makes us identify with whatever it is that we're confronted with. And in case of sadness or pain or misery, we drown ourselves in that emotion. And that is simply not constructive. That is why many people are suffering and continue to suffer, until outside circumstances change your situation, your predicament. With yoga, we take control, and we don't wait for outside situations to coincidentally change or not change. If it doesn't change, it means we continue to suffer from that misery. We have to start seeing our suffering, our pain, our sorrow simply as a signal. It just tells us something went wrong. And now it is our task to try to figure out what went wrong and why it went wrong. With that, you build memory, experience, allowing you to next time avoid that kind of misery. Otherwise it will return. In a cyclical way, your misery will happen again and again. Each person has their own typical kind of misery that repeats itself, simply because we all have different karma with us, carrying with us different karma. And once you start seeing that pattern, you not only learn about yourself, but most importantly, you learn how to possibly avoid it in the future. Doesn't mean that it's easy, because we're always human. And being human means that we sometimes are not alert, that we are sometimes, in spite of everything that we now know, still identify with our fate, with our misery. But there comes a point that we recognize it. There comes a point that you say, I did it again. So let's reset and try to do better. And this happens particularly when you meditate. It is when you meditate that all the distractions kind of dissipate, kind of disappear, and you are able to see the essence of the situation that you're presently in. In the moment that you see the essence, the problem is not a problem anymore. Because the moment that you see the problem, the solution naturally presents itself. Sutra 14. They have joy or sorrow for their fruit, according as their cause is virtue or vice. This sutra is putting the ball in our own court. You can never blame others anymore for your condition, for your situation. That doesn't mean that other people are not to blame. Of course not. We live in a very complex world, billions of people, they do affect us. But we have the key in our hands to whether we suffer from it or whether we thrive on it, whether we learn from it and progress and grow from it. While we are all to blame for things that happen in the world around us, putting blame on outside factors is just a useless exercise, a useless thing to do. Because in the end, it all comes back to ourselves. If you are suffering misery, pain, sorrow, as the sutra suggests, there must be vice as a cause. Vice is your own behavior that has attracted the pain, the sorrow, the misery. Remember the philosophy of the Kleshas. Remember the law of karma. Negative energy attracts negative energy. But the good message of the sutra is that good energy attracts good energy as well, in the exact same way as negative energy attracts negative energy. So now we have a choice. Do we continue that kind of behavior that has caused that misery and suffering all our lives up until now? Or are we slowly going to start replacing vice with virtue? Are we slowly going to focus more and more on doing good things and positive things in life? Because good things and positive things attract good and positive energy. And in that way you take control. And you move away more and more from misery, sorrow and sadness, more and more towards reward, happiness and joy. There is one thing that you will learn along the way, and that is try to do it without expecting fruit from your labor. I think we have not read that yet, so we will read a sutra where Patanjali actually tells us exactly that. Do good just because you understand the law of the universe. Not to have something in return. That is a matter of faith. Rest assured that the law of karma is very exact, concrete. You do bad things, rest assured that bad things will come your way. Start doing good things and you will see more and more good things coming your way, naturally. Sutra 15. To the people who have developed discrimination, all is misery on account of the pains resulting from change, anxiety and tendencies, as also on account of the conflicts between the functioning of the gunas and the vrittis of the mind. Gunas and vrittis make it sound very complicated, but gunas are your tamas, rajas and sattva condition. Depending on the condition you are in, you function differently. And that can cause conflict. The best functioning, the most harmonious behavior functioning occurs when we are relatively sattvic. Our behavior changes accordingly whether there is a tamas condition or a rajas condition. The vrittis are, of course, the whirls of energy that are triggered. The samskara is triggered, leading to the manifestation of the wound, the memory, which then attracts the klesha from the environment. This is a bit complicated, but we explained the principle of the kleshas at the beginning, the introduction of the subject. It comes down to the same principle that energy attracts energy. So depending on the quality of that energy, that is what you will attract. To the people who have developed discrimination, all is misery. That is not very much of a promise, is it? Because we are sitting here developing discrimination. And this sutra tells us that everything you perceive becomes miserable. We mentioned before the diseases of the disciple. And from lesson 1, I have tried to hammer home the issue that people who become more conscious and sensitive, which happens as a result of yoga, they also tend to suffer more. We start seeing things, feeling things, being conscious of things that didn't exist in our experience before. And so that can lead to emotional instability and more suffering. When that happens, it is important that you see that. Also know that all holy books and religious scriptures mention this phenomenon. In the Bible it is called the penance of the ascete, the penance of the ascetic. So what monks started to do to deal with this, they started to torture themselves. They started to flog themselves until they are bleeding. But that is the wrong interpretation of the suffering. The suffering is happening internally, mentally, in the form of internal conflicts, in the form of our becoming conscious of our flaws, the mistakes that we make, and the ensuing suffering that comes out of it. I'm a fan of Vikings. Have you seen Vikings? That is a historical, it is a series based on historical facts. There's a lot of fiction, of course, but there is a quote from King Egbert, which I found very interesting because it relates to this misery that we experience as a result of our growth. And King Egbert seemed to have said, "All is vanity and vexation of spirit. In such wisdom is much grief, and he that increases knowledge increases sorrow." Can you follow that a little bit? That is, in fact, this sutra, just pronounced from another culture, but an insight from a wise person that comes to the same conclusion. Change. We have some disturbances here described. Change, worries, anxiety, and tendencies. The biggest cause of stress in people's life is change. The number one cause of stress, you know what that is? It's losing a partner, which turns your life upside down. Number two, you know what that is? It's moving house. Do you realize how stressful that is? I do. I hate moving. The apartment where I live now, I lived for 12 years. And people are surprised. Because in Korea, everybody moves all the time. And I just don't understand that they don't feel the stress. Or they are so used to it, or they just don't see it. But for me, I'd rather stay there, well, until the end, if possible. I know it's not possible because the area is designated a redevelopment area. So sooner or later I will have to move. But I hope by then I'm ready to move to a place where I never ever have to move again. We'll see, anyway. Change of job, change of house, change of city or country where you live, change of partner. Is that stressful? I don't know, it's not a good example. But change, just be aware of it, and for me, being aware of the stress that moving causes makes me just not want to move. Although there are many things that I can complain about my apartment, because it's like 60 years old. I'd rather stay put as long as possible, because that stability, especially as a yogi, you thrive on that stability. And it doesn't matter if the house is half falling apart. It's very solid, because it was the first Western apartment built in Korea. It's called Shibom-apat. If you look it up, you can see it's the first ever Western apartment built. So very solid. Thick walls, thick floors, so very solid, but old. Anyway, change. Worries and anxiety. Worries and anxiety are expressions of fear, which we know is located in the lowest chakra. So actually, it is a condition that all of mankind is suffering from, but it is a condition that we know we don't have to passively accept. We need to move energy from Muladhara chakra to higher levels, and fear, worry, anxiety will be replaced by hope, vision, dreaming. It really works. It is this process that has enabled me to do all those scary things that I did, including change. I left my country with nothing. I changed my nationality, which most people don't understand. I went into situations where other people would not go because on the surface it didn't seem a smart thing to do. But I followed my heart, not my Muladhara chakra. And in the heart you see the potential, you see your destiny. And that overrules any doubt, worry, and fear that you could have. It doesn't mean that you don't have the doubt, worry, and fear. You have. But you undergo it consciously. You deal with it with the opposite, with hope and vision, long-term view. And along the way, you come across all those obstacles and challenges that teach you who you are and where you need to go and where you need to be. You see that? I've had my doubts, especially when things seem to go in the other direction. But I realized that is a test of the universe. If you give up, There are no rewards anymore. You have to go back to your old life of suffering. If you can overcome, the universe says you passed the test. This time you are going to the next level. 30 years ago, because of my yoga studies, I knew theoretically that it works like that. I followed my heart, had many obstacles, lots of misery, and apparently failures. But the older I get, the more I have no doubt anymore that it works like that. What I set out to do 35 years ago, when I started practicing yoga, 37 years ago, what I set out to do then, based on what I felt in my heart, I've accomplished. Including the most important last step, which is becoming totally independent. Last year I couldn't tell you this because it was still a scary business. But I just kept focusing on doing the good things. Rescuing the dogs. I've supported some people to get out of a deep dark hole. While I was myself in a dark hole, that kept me going. And I just kept going. I had sleepless nights, heart palpitations, my heart beating out of my chest. But we got there. And another confirmation, not the first one, another, and maybe the most important. Worries and anxiety, remember, do not deny them because we say here, well, you know, life is better when you focus on hope and vision. No, they are very important signals, but we must not lose ourselves in that condition, which is the natural human thing to do. Try to remember that. Whatever it is that you are confronting in life, investigate consciously. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling so unstable or so scared about the future, or etc., etc., etc. And based on that, you go into a conversation with yourself with which you guide yourself through the challenges and the obstacles. And in the end, everything is just a matter of time. So the one most important asset we need to obtain is patience, because impatience is a human characteristic that tends to lead to failure. Next time when you're impatient because the one thing that you are pursuing is not manifesting, tell yourself that you have a lifetime to get there. And I say again, get rid of your bucket list. You have much more important things to do in life than pursuing going to the Eiffel Tower or go deep sea diving or all those things that people put on their bucket list. If you can handle it, go ahead, make a bucket list. But for most people, it's a big source of anxiety. Because why do we make a bucket list? Because we are afraid that we will never achieve it. Get rid of. I'm not interested in anything anymore other than just daily life. Because when I go on a vacation or when I visit a most coveted location somewhere that everybody is ranting and raving about, I just think, what is this all? And now, daily life is enough for a yogi. Because there you feel connected, there you feel that even when it's boring, that is what it is about. Anyway, if you have a bucket list, play with it, but do not let it determine your condition in terms of fear, anxiety, because if you pay attention, you will see it will come into play subconsciously. Tendencies and habits. Life of a yogi is best when there is a daily routine. My life is very boring because of my daily routines. Tendencies and habits are part of daily routines. So, you know, before I came to Korea, I lived on the 5th floor without elevator. So to get my newspaper from the mailbox, I had to go down 10 flights of stairs and back up again to enjoy reading my newspaper. So that's okay. If you like reading newspapers, it's part of starting the day. It feels sattvic, it feels comfortable in a way while having your breakfast or some tea or coffee. But then the newspaper is not in the mailbox. You went all the way down and now you have to go all the way back up with empty hands. Can you feel what happens? You start to grumble, you start to curse. What the hell is this? I had paper rounds myself as a teenager, so I know the work that it involves, it entails. But sometimes you forget. You have like 150 newspapers to deliver, and in a moment of absent-mindedness or something, you skipped one of the mailboxes. It can happen. It happened to me. The thing is, if you're the receiver and there is no newspaper, it breaks your routine. And you see your whole day going to ruins, not being able to read the newspaper while having breakfast and a cup of tea or coffee. As a yogi, how do you deal with this? You're immediately aware of the annoyance, maybe even anger that it causes, and you quickly determine for yourself an alternative. In the case of the newspaper, what I would do is I would bring out the Saturday newspaper. Saturday newspaper is more than 100 pages and has many different sections about travel, about sailing, about cars, about economy, about things that you don't have in the weekdays. The weekdays are focused on news. But there's so much on Saturday, you have no time to read it all. So when it happened that there was no newspaper, I felt the anger and I would just quickly think, hey, wait a minute, I have some left. Nothing lost, nothing to worry about. Just be aware. It's good to have routine, it's stable, it's sattvic. But the internet can just suddenly break down. Or you have a habit of watching Netflix after the day is done, the dishes are washed, and you have your favorite series that you are following, and suddenly the setup box breaks down. Just experience the annoyance, but try to quickly go into a practical mode to find an alternative. There are alternatives enough. Is this important? Yes, because we're only human. We have a tendency to stay stuck in that annoyance, in the grumble, in the anger towards whoever could have caused that thing to happen or to fail. Conflict between the conditions and the worlds, the gunas and the vrittis that are mentioned in that sutra. A very practical example of this is dealing with depression. Except for clinical depression, All other depressions are simply a matter of energy. Tamas. Clinical depression can have much deeper causes that may require professional interference by a psychiatrist or psychologist, but most all other depressions are simply a matter of condition. It's a tamas condition that leads to a negative, vicious cycle of negative thought, which leads to depression. What do we do about it? As dedicated yogis, we practice yoga. Asana is rajas, but in a measured way, leading to energy rise up. You will see, if you are dealing with depression, the last thing you think of, usually in such a condition, is to actually take out your mat and start practicing yoga. But you will see, if you have the courage to do just that, the discipline to do just that, the depression disappears like snow before the sun. Yes?
You have to keep it up though. I mean, the effects are not permanent, and that can be hard in a melancholic state to maintain that intensity.
Yes, but that is why yoga, or being a yogi or a spiritual person, is not easy. Because we always have a tendency to fall back to our prior condition, our humanness. Also, when it comes to depression, I had a tendency to be depressed without clear cause. And doing yoga helped a lot, and exercising helped a lot, but it always came back. Not anymore, after I found out that I was lacking essential nutrients.
B12, right?
Especially the B vitamins have a huge influence on your brain functioning. So I'm very religious about taking supplements. I take various supplements. And I've had that condition since I was a child, all the way into my 30s. It's gone. So nutrition is, but that is something that you will figure out. You start practicing yoga helps, but there can be a ping pong effect. Every time you practice yoga, it's okay, but then you fall back. And then you kind of, along the way you figure out where it actually comes from. And I just realized that all my life I've been kind of malnourished in a way. That's also the reason why I'm not a strict vegetarian anymore.
I think nutritional yeast can supply a lot of those ingredients if you want to be more vegetarian.
Nutritional yeast and spirulina has B vitamins and amino acids and just vitamin B. Vitamin B is quite cheap because this is a rest product from beer manufacturing, for example, and other processes.
Not so much in Korea, actually. Unless your
What?
online B vitamins are
iHerb.
surprisingly expensive.
iHerb. iHerb is very cheap with, you know, melatonin. Melatonin, it's very difficult to get in Korea, and if you can get it, very expensive. It costs nothing at iHerb. No, iHerb doesn't deliver melatonin. There is a red text that says we're not allowed to ship to Korea. For melatonin, you have to go to wholehealth.com. Just 6,000 won, $6 for a bottle with 180 melatonin tablets. But Whole Health is a small firm. It's ideological. They have very high quality products, but you have to pay shipping. I heard no shipping fee if you order more than 20,000 won, so this is very cheap and convenient. And it arrives in 3 days. Amazing. When I came to Korea, you know how I communicated with my family? I wrote a letter, put it in the mailbox, and 6 weeks later I would get a reply. So much has changed. If I want, I can contact them now and I immediately get a reply, WhatsApp or something. Can you imagine? Getting old. Good, questions? Interesting stuff, huh? Okay, we have a pranayama which we will discuss after asana practice. Let's have a short break.